So there are certain mindsets you need to develop to be able to execute the groove. There are certain principles, and those mindsets are composed of three things. And the first mindset you need to develop is a writer's focus. Now, Dr. Cho's dirty little secret is, despite his PhD in electrical engineering, completing what could consider to be, let's see, how many hours did I take? 3, 6, 12, 15, 21 units in chemical engineering. I actually completed 27 units in creative writing and literature. And the idea behind creative writing is that, and literature, is that you have all these different ideas, and they all mean different things, but they're not necessarily connected. And so your challenge is, how do you bring those pieces together? And when you can bring those pieces together, you find the truth. And that's how you solve uncertainty. The mindset of writers is that there has to be a reason for every single word you put down. If you look at Dr. Cho's designs, there's a reason why everything's there. People ask me questions like, why did you make this a right angle instead of a curve? Why is this 25 microns instead of 50? And I can rattle off every single reason why I made something a certain way. And when you do things, you need this level of detail. You need to think hard about what is it I'm doing. You want efficiency. You want to reduce waste. In terms of mindsets, there are three mindsets you need. The second mindset you need to develop is sunk cost. Now, a lot of you are familiar with it. When you create something that's recoverable, then you can't consider it anymore. You have to consider, from where I am right now, moving forward, what's the most profitable path. And the problem is that people don't do that. People are anchored. People have emotional attachments to what they've done, and you need to develop the mindset that that's not the way to do things. The United States of America, a lot of people have tried to copy the United States. What people don't consider is that these other nations had hundreds or thousands of years of traditions and ways they've done things. That's extremely hard to break. The thing about the United States is we started with a clean slate. We're just like, we're the mutts from all over the world, so we didn't have any rules, so we could make our own. And the third aspect of the mindsets is developing what's called an architect's focus. And that's that things exist within other things. So when you look at the larger picture, and this is what Breva talked about, this is where you find innovation. That a window sits within a steeple that sits on top of a building, and that building exists within other buildings. What layer are you working at? How do you move in and out? And so this context of understanding what lies next is a way to find innovation. You need some wind at your back if you're going to accomplish anything. If you're a marketer, you need viral effects on some level. You're never going to make it if you have to treat every customer like its own market. You need people to talk. You need people to promote. You need your buyers to become sellers for you. By the same token, we would have never been able to traverse and travel the world if there hadn't been wind. And so there is potential energy for you to take advantage of. And so you need to find these forces to tap into, and they actually exist. And what they're related to is momentum. And so everybody, well, I shouldn't say everybody, but most people acknowledge that momentum exists. It's difficult to quantify, it's difficult to explain, but you've all felt it before, you've all known it before. And I actually came up with this theory when I was 13, and it was just observing the rhythms of life, and I came to the conclusion that good and bad events, they all even out at the end. And so my thinking was, is that when things go bad, be patient. They will turn around, and when they do turn around, that's when you have to work to the hilt, because positive momentum isn't going to last forever, so you have to take advantage of it. And yet people acknowledge this exists, but they don't manage to it. And so if you have no momentum, this is about putting together smaller tasks, focused tasks, get some victories under your belt, Start building up momentum, because momentum is basically a string of positive events together. By the same token, and this is understanding your crew and what you're doing, it's a little like riding a horse. I've actually sent people home when they're having bad days. And where I learned this from was actually playing poker. And that's that one day I lost at poker, and I went through every hand in my head, and I couldn't figure out one thing I did wrong. And I explained it to my roommate at MIT. He graduated with a bachelor's in economics, a bachelor's in computer science, and a master's in math. And he got that in 4 years. And I said, Brett, I lost, and I can't figure out what I did. And he said to me, your problem, Joe, is that you're a dumb shit. And what he told me is that there are just some days where you can't explain it, but everything will just go wrong. And he said, there's only one move to do in that situation: quit. And I've actually adopted it. And so I've had days where everything goes wrong and there were low probability events. I sent people home at like 10 a.m. Oh, I got into super trouble for it, but it was the right thing to do. Because all you are is a floundering person in a net, and all you're going to do is make yourself sink faster. And when things are going well, work to it. If people have momentum and they say, hey, I want to work an extra 8 hours, but I'm not going to come in tomorrow, that's fine. Let them roll with it. Cancel meetings. Do what you can to take advantage of it, to open up the schedule as much as possible to take advantage of it. Another factor in potential energy is people tend to look at outcomes as being linear. And if I work 2 hours, I should get double the output of working 1 hour. The thing is, there's not much difference between good and great. And so the thinking is, well, if I work 7 hours and I get a return of 125, then that's how much I have to work. And what people don't recognize is that in a lot of cases, these things are exponential. And so you could do more. One thing that's come under a lot of criticism is this pursuit of unicorns. It's like, why can't we do smaller franchises, make less money, but, have a nice small business with 20 people or something like that, and that's just as valuable. Well, the thing is, the amount of work for you to make a small franchise is just as much as the work it's going to take you to build $1 billion company. So that's an example of exponential return. And so if you put in a little bit more effort, you can get more return. And I actually use this to a very large effect in grad school. For example, we have 2 grad students, and it's 6 p.m. So grad student 1 says, I'm tired, it's 6 o'clock, I'm going to go have dinner, and then I'm going to go to bed. Grad student number 2 realizes that if he just puts in 4 hours more, then he can put that run into a furnace. That furnace runs for 8 hours. So he can, if he just works 4 hours more, he could pick up a whole day. And that day he picks up is going to happen while he's sleeping. And so now you've picked up a day, and those days start to add up, and those days eventually become over a year. In terms of your own attitude of what you need to do, is you can't always be the person you want to be. You have to be the person who you need to be. You have to overcome your biases, and by doing this builds agility and flexibility. An example is, for those of you who are parents, one time I was having problems with my daughter. I didn't like her boyfriend, and we were out playing this football game, and I just kind of headbutted him in the mouth, and he started bleeding. What a baby. He went to my wife. He hit me. I'm bleeding. Oh, jeez, give me a break. But anyway, my daughter got furious with me, and she started to shut down. And my wife and we started fighting about other things. My wife said, look, I can't fault you on what you've done or what you've said. You're absolutely right. And she told me, but you're going to lose her. she's going to stop listening to you. She's going to shut down, and everything's going to fall apart. And you're approaching that point very quickly. And so at that point, I realized I could be who I want to be, but I'm going to lose my daughter. And so I realized you can't always be who you want to be. You have to be who you have to be. And that's the same thing with your team. You can't always do the things that you want to do. You have to understand what can you push and what can you not push. And so in the next video, we'll talk about the mechanics of the groove.